Welcome to Money Talks with Cathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, President Trump takes aim on China in his biggest tariff salvo yet. The Philippines' exit from the gray list likely to reduce costs for OFWs sending money home. A third investment in as many weeks. The Maharlika Investment Corporation finances the Philippine affiliate of Australian mining firm Celsius Resources. And the prayer vigils for Pope Francis continue from Italy to Argentina to the Philippines. An exclusive chat from a Vatican insider later on in the show. Trade ties between the U.S. and China are likely to worsen as the Trump administration takes aim at the world's biggest economy. According to Bloomberg, U.S. President Trump has rolled out a series of moves involving investment, trade, and other issues directly hitting China's economy. Beijing expressed opposition to a memorandum signed by Trump that further curbs Chinese investments in strategic sectors. On Monday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry condemned the memorandum, an America First investment policy, which promotes foreign investments while protecting U.S. interests, particularly posed by, quote, foreign adversaries like China. The U.S. also proposed fees on the use of commercial ships made in China to counter its dominance in vessel production. Along with a 10% duty on all Chinese imports, these steps amount to the most sweeping actions targeting Beijing, which could complicate a deal to reduce China's trade surplus with the U.S. that Trump wanted to forge. Trump says higher tariffs in Canada and Mexico is on schedule. Trump claims other countries charge unfair import taxes that come at the expense of domestic manufacturing and jobs. The, quote, reciprocal tariffs against the U.S.'s two biggest trading partners have been suspended for a month. Trump has said the tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods are meant to pressure them to do more to address illegal immigration and smuggling of prohibited drugs.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of.
Let's take a look at Asian markets. Are opening lower in the first few hours of trading this Tuesday. The Australian ASX 200 there is down about 1%, along with the Kospi Index in Seoul. We've just received word the Bank of Korea has cut rates to its lowest level since August 2022, and we're seeing the Kospi down about 1%. Japan's Nikkei 225 is also down by about 1.3%. Investors really are in a risk-off mood, as you can see the down arrows there because of Trump's new tariff announcements. A bit of a backdrop here. Reuters had expected a 25 basis point cut on the Bank of Korea. And the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 also dropped Monday, with technology stocks causing that slump. Let's take a look at the tech-heavy Nasdaq that closed trading over 1% lower. S&P 500 declining by 0.5% after Trump's new tariff announcements, and the Dow gained by nearly 0.1%. And taking a look at the futures markets and see how they're doing ahead of the opening of trade later on today. S&P futures near the flat line, notching up by just 0.04%. And these figures come in at 7:15 New York time, or about 7 a.m. Manila time. And the Dow Jones futures is up by about 0.1%. Nasdaq down 0.07%. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the peso open and see how it's doing. From 9 a.m., seeing an open there of 57.90 to the dollar. Peso strengthened yesterday, Monday, at 57.808 pesos against the dollar. So we're seeing a little bit of a weakness there. PSEI had been up for the first few minutes of trading, as you can see there, 61.01, up about 0.1%. Stock market was basically flat on Monday, down about 0.03% in the wake of the sell-off on Wall Street last week. Trump's threats of higher tariffs and America First policies could slow global trade, investments, and employment, including jobs for and remittance from overseas Filipino workers. That's why the reserve requirement cut from the Bangko Sentral and the Philippines' removal from the dirty money gray list have become a welcome development amid all the uncertainty. For RCBC's Mike Ricafort, these are positive leads that have led the markets badly need now in view of President Trump's tariff threats. Citi's Johanna Chua in Hong Kong, though, says the Philippines has got more work to do.
It's great to get out of the gray list, but we need more than that to have a kind of ecosystem for manufacturing, including having a better established infrastructure and kind of supply chain ecosystem.
Even so, the Philippines' removal from the gray list is a vote of confidence. Well, let's check in on how the rest of the world thinks. And head on over to Hong Kong, where Vice Consul Roberto Mabalot is standing by. He helms up the commercial attaché at the Philippine Trade and Investment Center there. So good to have you with us, Vice Consul. Magandang umaga po.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yeah, so Bobby, what are you making of it? We got off the gray list, and economists say it's going to be pretty good for the OFWs remitting money home.
Well, for the perspective of the Philippine Trade and Investment Center here in Hong Kong, we're focusing more on enhancing bilateral relations. So we find this as a welcome update, and this would actually help us foster more economic partnerships that will benefit both the Philippines and Hong Kong. In fact, here in Hong Kong right now, the PTIC Hong Kong is pushing for the Joint Economic Commission between the two regions, basically, so that we'll be able to leverage our long-standing alliance with each other. This approach will also allow us to explore new opportunities for collaboration, particularly in sectors such as technology, infrastructure, and trade.
Balikan ko lang, Vice Consul, yung mga overseas Filipino workers natin dyan, because when I look at the Hong Kong dollar, it's pegged to the U.S., and the Hong Kong Central Bank said it's not going to change the peg anytime soon. So there's a bit of strength that economists are saying is burdening the local economy in Hong Kong. So what impact might this have on the level of remittances that we get from our Hong Kong OFWs?
Well, in relation to remittances, the remittances of our OFWs will always be constant. And of course, we would like to strengthen it more through the bilateral agreements or relations that we have between between Hong Kong and basically the Philippines. So we look at it in a manner that if and when there's confidence in our investors, of course, there'll be more positive outcomes also in relation to the remittances to be provided by our OFWs.
Exactly. That's what we need, confidence. In fact, confidence in investing in the country. But at the same time, Hong Kong is having to brace for Trump's biggest trade tariff salvo. Yet in China, the new trade war, Bloomberg is saying, is just blurring the lines between Hong Kong and Beijing, because threatening to erode the city's main selling point as a global financial hub could also imperil the trade and investment goals that you have for the Philippines from Hong Kong.
Well, actually, we can always look at it in the manner that we've always had bilateral agreements between Hong Kong and basically the ASEAN region. So we can actually leverage this to our benefit. Furthermore, because our emphasis right now is more of the collaborations that are already existing and that can actually, that we can think moving forward with Hong Kong. So we're emphasizing on the strengths that we have right now to bring into the table because of all these positive things that are happening right now with us being removed from the gray list, as you stated earlier.
Yeah, and including policies, Bobby, we have about a minute. I see that you're actively spreading the word and the Create More Act and how it would benefit investors through tax incentives, among others. So in what way does bringing home more foreign investments lessen the uncertainties that we're all facing right now because of Trump 2.0?
Yes, by trying to educate and inform more our foreign investors here in Hong Kong about the benefits of RA 12066, would be able to tell these foreigners that the Philippines is actually open to business and that we're trying to make it happen for them, that we have all these benefits that would be in favor if and when they expand their business in the Philippines. Of course, like what you were saying earlier, i- when these investors invest in the Philippines, there'll be more employment to be provided to the Filipinos, and there'll be more there'll be more um, other than the employment, we'll also have a lot of money coming into the Philippines, which will benefit our economy.
That's definitely what we need. And we'll keep this conversation going as soon as those foreign investors come in. Vice Consul Bobby, thank you so much. Roberto Mabalot of the Philippine Trade and Investment Center
Thank
joining
you.
us live there in Hong Kong. Let's now head on over to San Francisco and speak with the founder and CEO of Pomelo, the first financial technology platform to combine consumer credit and remittance transfers, Eric Velasquez Frenkel. He is a former engineer at Meta Platforms, Inc. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric.
Good morning, Kathy. Thank you for having me.
Great. So you've heard the news there. We've gotten off the gray list. Pretty good business for one in remittance transfers. What do you make of it?
Well, this is great to see. I mean, this fundamentally signals what we've already known, that the Philippines is a very safe and trustworthy place for financial transactions. It was an 18-point action plan that had to be accomplished, and it's an ongoing commitment. And so I think it's a great sign for the remainder of the decade of growth that awaits the Philippines.
Well, you've started offering Pomelo since 2022, so we were just coming off COVID then. What's been the take-up so far, many years on, and what's been the impact of the credit scoring that comes along it?
It really is an ability to connect two modern financial technology capabilities, one of which, of course, is in the Philippines, which is GCash. We saw so much uptake with GCash because of the pandemic. And then we married that, of course, to the ability for our customers in the United States to send now and pay later, typically into GCash, but of course, to any Philippine bank. So needless to say, we're the first to be able to do this. No one prior in money transfer has ever trusted its customer base to send now and pay us back later. But we believe it's important because this is ultimately about connecting remittance transfer with our financial growth for our customers. By paying your bill the next month with Pomelo, we report that to the bureaus, and that actually improves our customers' FICO scores, which is very important as they seek to purchase a home, a car, things like that. Given that money transfer is so important for so many Filipino families, we're very happy to be the first to actually reward our customers with a better credit score, with a credit line, with points actually on some of the things that they send. And so we're very gratified, of course, to see that uptake, phenomenal uptake with the Pomelo app itself.
Well, it's also the first time that we're all seeing Trump 2.0 and how it's panning out. Concerned that Trump's plan to tightening immigration rules in the U.S. to create and protect more jobs for U.S. citizens could potentially slow remittances from the U.S. So how much of a risk is this to your Filipino corridor?
Quite frankly, not at all. I think that, the Philippines is definitely one of our closest allies, our closest trade partners in Asia. If you look at the sort of folks that come to the U.S., they come to go into healthcare, into engineering, into the law profession. It's really an example where we feel that the policies that Trump will be enacting are not going to impact the Philippines because it's an exemplary example of what immigration is for. America is founded by immigrants. I myself, come from, either a short line or a long line, depending on how you look at my family. But we're all immigrants to this country, and I think the Philippines has really exemplified what is the best to come to America. And I'm very thankful that it was the inspiration for me to actually start the company. So I really see this as not being subject to the Philippines. For example, you can see Trump is actually in favor of H-1Bs. It really is a function of actually securing the border domestically. But remittance transfer, I think, is something that is, as a personal tool, really not on the radar relative to tariffs or things like that.
We got about a minute, Eric. So will you be fundraising anytime soon? 3 years ago, you've raised $70 million in seed financing.
I mean, one of the things that we're looking to do, of course, is expand this product beyond the Philippines. So going global into other important corridors, namely one of which would be US to Mexico. But India, of course, is another major partner. So we will be pursuing a new fundraising round to make that happen.
Got it. Thank you so much, and all the best in the remittance transfer business as we're seeing Trump 2.0 pan out. Eric Velasquez Franquil of Pomelo joining us live from San Francisco. And coming up after the break, the new German chancellor says it is unacceptable for the U.S. to strike a deal with Russia without Ukraine and Europe. And later on in the show, prayers for Pope Francis as he remains in critical condition in a hospital in Rome. Money Talks in One News. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. In corporate news, BDO, Meralco, and Manila Water reported strong earnings in 2024. BDO Unibank's net profit climbed nearly 12% to 82 billion pesos. The bank says loan growth and higher interest income helped drive the increase. It also said its solid financial performance positions it for long-term growth. Meralco also posted record earnings with a core income of over 45 billion pesos. Higher electricity sales and tariff adjustments helped lower power distributors surpass its 2024 target. The company said it remains focused on delivering reliable energy while expanding its renewable initiatives. Meanwhile, Manila Water's net income surged 88% to 10.5 billion pesos. The company said higher build volume and tariff adjustments fueled the growth. Manila Water's non-East Zone businesses more than tripled earnings, contributing over 2 billion pesos. San Miguel Global Power is ramping up investments in the energy sector. The energy subsidiary of San Miguel Corporation has set an 87.1 billion peso capital expenditure for 3 power projects. SMGP allocated 34.4 billion pesos for a 600 megawatt coal-fired power plant in Mariveles, Bataan. It's also expanding its Masinloc plant in Zambales with 2 350 megawatt units set for completion between 2025 and 2026. Meanwhile, 36.9 billion pesos is going to a 1,320 megawatt combined cycle power plant in Batangas, expected to be completed by early 2025. The Maharlika Investment Corporation is funding a major mining project in the Cordillera region. Makilala Mining, a subsidiary of Australia-based Celsius Resources, secured a $76.4 million loan from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. The company says the funds will support its Maalinao Kaigutan Biog Copper Gold project in Kalinga, including an updated feasibility study and front-end engineering design. Part of the funds will also support early development, including road construction and skills training for the Balatok community. Makilala also said the initial $10 million will jumpstart operations, reducing reliance on its parent company. Maharlika CEO Rafael Consing says this project aims to set a new standard for responsible mining in the industry. For more details on these stories, check out Business World online. Heads up, motorists. Fuel prices are up again today, February 25th. Oil prices announced a price increase of 70 centavos per liter for gasoline, 40 centavos per liter for diesel, and 20 centavos per liter for kerosene. This marks the second consecutive week of fuel price hikes. Sea Oil, Clean Fuel, Petrogas, and Shell have confirmed the adjustments in separate advisories. The Department of Energy attributes the increase to supply disruptions following a Ukrainian drone strike on a Russian pumping station. With the emerging market stock rally disrupted by Trump's biggest trade tariff salvo yet against China, let's take a look at how the Philippine peso and stocks are trading. I've seen the peso trade at about 57.90 to the dollar at the get-go, and at about 6,100 for the PSEI. It is up about 0.1%. Let's take a look at the peso. See how that's trading, still 57.90 to the dollar, weaker than yesterday when it closed at 57.808 against the dollar. And again, the Bank of Korea has just cut rates by 25 basis points about an hour ago. That's about the lowest it's been since August 2022 as it strives to stimulate a slowing economy. The Bank of Korea eases rates to 2.75% from 3%, trimming for the third time in 4 meetings. Immediately after the decision came out, the Kospi stock index had dropped nearly 0.5%. And with me now is Edmund Lee of Kalem Trading Institute joining us here in the studio. Good to see you, Edmund. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cathy, morning.
Right, so how are you taking this all in? Trump's biggest salvo against China. We got banks either cutting rates or keeping them on hold, as we have. How are you chasing alpha?
You know, 2 years ago, this was a biggest question mark for us, right? We saw high inflation, high interest rates, and I think everybody was discounting how long this would actually be taking, right? Ever since the rate cut cycle that started last year, everybody thought, okay, it's time, right? That's the reason why we've seen a huge foreign inflow come in the entire emerging market, maybe third quarter last year. And all of a sudden, Trump administration winning, everything reversed in the fourth quarter. Until today, we're still seeing foreign selling in the first quarter. You know, our opinion has not changed in the market. Yes, we understand markets are cheap. And if you're asking me from an investing standpoint, I really do believe this is a great opportunity. You want to be buying yielding assets. So for example, whether it's in bonds or equity, I think that has been our #1 trade. So if you're buying equity, make sure you're buying something that gets you paid to wait.
Yeah, but where? I mean, you've got your CTS Global Fund that's invested in the S&P 500 index and also benchmarked against a PSEI. So where do we pick and choose?
If you're asking me from a pure alpha standpoint, our focus has still been outside. And I'll explain why in a bit. Because everybody explains that things are expensive, especially with regards to S&P 500. And that may be true, right? But if you look at it in terms of EPS growth, 13% EPS growth is still coming from your Mag 7 and in fact the S&P, right? So do you pay more for growth or do you pay less, which is 9 times PE for the Philippines? But again, growth is still uncertain. And so in our opinion, focus is still outside, but don't get me wrong, we're still seeing pockets of opportunity happen in the Philippines. And there are some sectors that we like, especially the consumer sector. I think people did not expect such a downgrade or derating that happened in the consumer sector. It's actually not in the Philippines. It's entire ASEAN. So ASEAN, you're probably looking at 13, 14 times PE for 2025 and maybe 12 times for next year. So there are select companies in the consumer sector that we like. So for example, like URC today, still paying you at 5.8 to 6% cash dividend. I think the derating that happened in URC is overblown in our opinion. So we think that this is actually a great time for you to start picking up shares, especially with the rebalancing that's coming up this Friday. Aside from that, other consumer stocks that we like, DNL, we think the Batangas Plan CapEx is pretty much over. Yes, there is still some ramping up, and that's the reason why there's still some level of skepticism that's happening. But nonetheless, we think that how people have been downstreaming their consumer spending patterns, meaning instead of buying 12, 15 pesos, they're cutting it down to 8 and 9 alternatives. I think DNL has actually been positioned well in that segment.
All right. Well, thank you so much for those stock picks. We'll be monitoring that from a market standpoint. Thanks. Edmund Lee of Caleb Institute
Cathy,
joining
thank you.
us. And the headlines around the world. In Germany, the next chancellor warns the U.S. against turning its back on its longtime allies and claims Europe is now 5 minutes into midnight. Friedrich Merz tells in a news conference it will be unacceptable if Trump strikes a deal with Russian President Vladimir Putin while Ukraine and Europe watch on the sidelines. French President Emmanuel Macron met with Trump at the White House. The two leaders spoke on different issues, including the war in Ukraine. Macron says France and its European allies want a swift peace in the country, but don't want an agreement that is weak. And in the Vatican, the health of Pope Francis slightly improves as he battles pneumonia in both lungs, while his mild kidney insufficiency is not a cause for concern. The Pope spent his 11th night at the Policlinico Agustino Gemelli Hospital, his longest hospital stay of his nearly 12-year papacy. A Vatican official told Reuters Francis was eating normally and able to move about in his hospital room. He also called a Catholic priest based in war-torn Gaza as he continued work yesterday on Monday. As the world is fixated by the daily bulletins of how Pope Francis' health is doing, I spoke earlier with Rome-based Filipino prelate Father Gregory Gaston, rector of the Pontificio Colegio Filipino, to talk about the conclave and how the mood is like in Rome and at the Vatican.
Every day, the Vatican is quite an organization, I would say, and it has its different departments, the dicasteries, and everything is set in place. So all the offices would have their own heads, usually cardinal if it's a big office, and in this case, all the mechanisms are in place.
Cardinal Tagle is there with you in Rome, and he just held a Zoom prayer gathering for all the faithful. What is his role in Rome, and what is his schedule looking like with the wider congregation?
Cardinal Tagle is in charge of all the mission areas, meaning Asia, the whole of Asia, and also the whole of Africa would be under the supervision of Cardinal Tagle, meaning the selection of bishops, and then whatever questions there might be about the priests, about the religious, and then all the schools run by the religious or run by the parishes, by the dioceses, the outreach programs, the hospitals, orphanages, livelihood projects for the poor, orphanages, all these things would be under the supervision of Cardinal Tagle.
Gaston, the talk of succession all over social media. What can we expect from the Vatican?
Okay, so whenever the Pope ceases, meaning like John Paul, for example, he died, or like Pope Benedict, he resigned. So there would be what we call a sede vacante, a vacant see or a vacant seat, because each bishop has what we call the cathedra or the seat there in the cathedral. That is why it's also called a cathedral, because of the seat of that cathedra. So to give you an idea, when the sede vacante begins, meaning if the Pope dies or the Pope resigns, then the cardinals would have to wait for a period of, I think, 2 weeks, without doing anything. Well, technically nothing, but of course, reflecting, praying, trying to see how to come to Rome, because the dean of the College of Cardinals will call for that meeting on the second week. On the Sunday, ending that week, the older ones would no longer be included in the meetings. I think it would be on a Monday, the beginning of the voting of the ballots. So on that Monday, only the younger, below 80 cardinals would be included in that voting session, starting Monday until first voting Monday afternoon. If no Pope is elected, meaning no one has gotten the 2/3 majority, then voting would continue the next day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So all these steps are in place for after the see becomes vacant.
And catch the second part of my interview with Father Gaston in Rome tomorrow, Wednesday. And that is it for Money Talks with Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Have a great day ahead.